Hello Divination and welcome. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you step by step how to design 5 creative Divi Blurb Module designs. These are the final designs we're aiming to achieve, so without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started.
So let's start by creating a brand new page. So I'm going to come over here to Pages and click on Add New. I'm going to give my page a title. I'm just going to call this Creative Divi Blurb Module Designs, and then I'm going to click on Use the Divi Builder. Next, I'm going to click on Use Visual Builder, and then we're going to start our design from scratch. So I'm going to select this first option. Next, I'm going to choose my column structure. So I'm going to go with these 4 equal columns. I'm going to select that. Next, we need to go into the row settings and set our background colors. So I'm going to come over here to this gear icon to access my row settings. Click on background, and then I'm going to start by adding my background color. So I'm going to paste my color in here. Now, if you want to use the same color as I'm using in this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. Right, so now that we have this, next we're going to come over here to the design tab, click on sizing, and we are going to make this full width. So I'm going to click here, and then over here, we're also going to need the gutter width, and then I'm going to set my gutter width to 1. So the gutter width here is the distance between the columns. So by making them 1, it just means that we have no spaces between them. Next, I'm going to make sure that my column heights are equalized. So I'm going to select yes. Now it's time to add the margins. So I'm going to come over here to spacing. And then for the margin top, in fact, I'm going to need to have the same value for the top and the bottom. So I'm going to activate this chain, and I'm going to add 5 VW both to the top and the bottom. And then over here for the padding, I'm going to set it to 0 to the top and the bottom. We're going to save our settings. Now it's time to add our blurb. So I'm going to come over here, click this plus button. I'm going to search for my blurb. And here it is. I'm going to select it. Right. So what we need to do here is we're just going to remove the last sentence because we don't want too much text in here. So I'm just going to delete that. Right. So now that we have done that, next we're going to come over here to image and icon, and we are going to add an icon. So I'm just going to come over here and you click on use icon, and then we're going to search for our icon. So at this point, you can use any icon you need, but I'm just going to go with this one for now. Next, I'm going to come over here to the background and add my background color. So I'm going to click this plus button here, paste my color. And then next, we need to add my icon color. So to do that, we need to come over here to the design tab, click on image and icon. And this is where we set our icon color. So I'm going to set this to white. Next, I'm going to come over here to text. And for the text orientation, I'm going to make sure that this is centered. Now it's time to add my font. So I'm going to come over here to title text, and right now it's set to default. So I need to search for a specific font, and this time we're going to go with Encode Sans. I'm going to make this all caps. And then for the title letter spacing, I'm going to set this to 2. Next, we're going to set our margins. So I'm going to come over here to spacing, and for the margin top, I'm going to set this to -5 VW, both the top and the bottom. And we might as well set the padding for the tablet. So I'm going to click this little icon here. And for the tablet, I'm going to set this at 0 for both the top and the bottom. Next, let's move on to the padding. So over here, I'm going to click this this chain icon. And then I'm just going to switch this back over to the desktop. And for this, I'm going to set it to 5 VW both to the top and the bottom. And then I'm also going to set my padding for the left and the right to -3 VW. So I'm just going to again activate the chain. Now the reason why I'm activating the chain here is so that my values are added both to the top and the bottom. So this saves me a few seconds of entering my value over here and then entering over here to the right. Right, so the next thing we're going to do here is to go to the box shadow. So I'm going to come over here and select this option. And for the blur strength, I'm going to set it to 80 pixels. Right, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to save this, and then I need to duplicate this and add it over here to the middle. So I'm going to just hit Command C and then Command V. Now, if you're on a PC, it's Control C and then Control V. Right. So all we need to do now is to go into the settings over here and change the background color. So the background color here is going to be a complementary color. And again, if you want to use the same background color as I'm using here, I will leave a link to the post in the description below. Right. So I'm going to click here on background, and then I'm just going to paste my color over here. In fact, I'm just going to replace this like that. Right. Also, what we need to do here is we need to change the font color, because right now it's dark. We need to change this to white or light. So I'm going to come back over here to design, text, and then I'm going to change here from dark to light. So now it's easier to read. And then I'm just going to save this and then do the same over here. Okay, so now we need to add the list items over here. So I'm going to click this plus button to add our blurb module. So I'm going to select it. Okay, so what we need to do here is to set our icon. So I'm going to come over here to image and icon and click on use icon. So I'm going to select my icon as I did before, like that. Next, we're going to come back over here to the text and remove all this text because we don't need this, right? And then I'm going to come over here to my design, click on image and icon, and this is where we get to set our icon color. So I'm going to click here on this ink dropper tool. I'm going to paste my color in here. And then over here for the icon placement, I'm going to set this to the left. And then we're going to come over here to the title text. We're going to set our title text here to encode sans semi-condensed. Now it's time to add our custom padding. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here to spacing. And then for the padding, I'm going to set this to 20 pixels to the top and the bottom. And then for the left and right, I'm going to set this to 3VW. So as you can see, our text here is not visible. So we need to change that from dark to light. So I'm going to come back over here to the top, click on text, and then we're going to change the text color from dark to light. Okay, so now it's easier to read. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to duplicate these a few times. So I'm just going to save this. Then we're going to do this a few times. And then we need these over here to the right as well. So I'm going to hold down the command key and then we're going to multi-select these. Okay, now with that, I'm just going to Control C to copy, and then I'm going to come over here and hit Control V to paste. And what we could also do here is we could change the icon color. So I'm going to multi-select as I did before. So I'm going to hold down my command key. So I'm going to select all these three, click on the settings icon, and then I'm going to come over here to design, image and icon, and then I'm going to change my icon color and paste it here. Just like that, and then save. So this is our final result. And also what we could do is we can take a quick look and see how this looks like on different devices. So I'm going to click on the tablet view. This looks really nice. And then on the phone, it also looks really nice. Okay, so now it's time to build our second design. So I'm going to come over here, click this plus button and add my regular section. For this, I'm going to need 2 equal columns. So I'm going to select that. And then I'm going to add my blurb module. So I'm going to select it. Right, so what we need to do here is, first of all, we need to get rid of the last paragraph here because we have too much text. And then on the top here, I'm just going to say, get my free book. Next, I'm going to come over here to image and icon. Now, what you can do here is you can actually use an image of a book if you have one, or you can just use an icon. So in this example here, I'm just going to use an icon. So I'm going to click here on use icon, and I'm just going to choose an icon of a book. So I'll go with this one here. So what you could also do here is you can add your image URL. So this is the link which takes you to the actual book. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to add a blank link. Right, so now it's time to work on the background. So I'm going to come over here. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to add a background gradient. So I'm going to click over here, click this plus button. And for my first color, I'm going to add my RGBA value. So I'm just going to drag this second slider down a little bit so I can get these values. So what you want to do here is to paste the values between the brackets. Okay, just like that. So if you want to use the exact same values as I mentioned in the beginning of this tutorial, you can use I will link to the post in the show notes. Okay, so now it's time to add my second color. So again, I'm going to add my values between the brackets, just like that. Great. So now that I have all that set, the next thing we need to do is to add an image. So I'm going to click the third tab, click the plus button, and this is where now we get to add our image. So I'm going to go with this image here. Now, by the way, if you want to use these same images as well, I'm using the travel blog layout, and this is free from the layout pack. So go ahead and download it first so that you get all these images into your media library. Okay, so now that I have my image selected, I'm going to click upload an image. So you can see here, it's in the background. So what I'm going to do next is to come back over here to my gradient tab. So over here, I'm just going to make a few adjustments. So first of all, the gradient direction needs to be set at 90 degrees. Next, my start and end position needs to be 40% for the start and 70% for the end. And I'm going to place this gradient above the image. So next, I'm going to come over here to my design tab. So what we're going to do here is we are going to first change the title font and also the box shadows. So I'm going to come over here to title text. So we're going to change this to not serif. So I'm going to search for it here. And then the size needs to be set at 26. And then next, we're going to come over here to the body font. And we're also going to change this to not sans. So I'm going to search for it. Now the size here is going to be 16. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is to set our content width. So I'm going to come over here to sizing. And our content width needs to be set at 60%. Next, we're going to go to our custom padding. So I'm going to click on spacing. So for the bottom here, I'm going to set it at 2VW. And then for the left and the right, I'm also going to set this to 2VW. Okay, so the final step now is to add a CSS snippet, which is going to align all these to the left. So I'm going to come over here to the advanced tab. And then over here on the blurb content, I'm just going to add my CSS snippet. So now you can see everything has been moved over to the left, giving us enough space between our image here and the content. So what you could also do here as well is you can add some padding to the top here, but this would look even better if this was an image. So let me just try and do that quickly so I can show you how that works. So if I click here, so if I come back over here to the content, I'm going to click on image and icon, and this time I'm going to set this to an image. So let's say I go with maybe even this one right here, upload an image. So now you can see that this would actually work as our book. Okay, so the next thing we need to do now is to add a box shadow. So what we need to do here is to just add the shadow so that this book looks like it's overlapping. So let me show you how to do that. So over here, I'm going to choose this option right here, and then make sure that your vertical position here is set to 50. Like that. So now you can see here that this book looks like it's overlapping, which is great. And then over here for the color, just set this color to white. That. So now we can see that our book is here and it looks like it's overlapping. And then finally for the horizontal position here, just set this to 0 and our design is done. So now I can go ahead and save. Okay, so the next thing now is to work on our third design. So I'm going to click here on this plus button. Click on regular, and then I'm going to choose 3 equal columns, just like that. Now it's time to insert our module. So I'm going to add my blurb module, just like that. Next, we're going to decrease the text that we have here in the description box. So again, I'm going to take the last paragraph out. And then we're going to come over here to the background, and we're going to add a background gradient. Click the plus button, add our first color. So I'm going to add my first color here. And then for the second color, this is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm going to make sure I place my values between the brackets. So first of all, you need to click the slider down like that, and then paste the values between the brackets. Great. So now that we have that, next we need to come over here to our gradient. So right now it's set at linear. This needs to be set as a radial. And then for our start position, I'm going to set this to 60%. And then for our end position, I'm going to set this to 0. Now, notice that as soon as I've done that, we now have this circle. In fact, it's being covered here by this image. So I'll be showing you that in a bit. Okay, so now we need to place the gradient above the background image. So I'm going to click here on yes to place gradient above background image. Now we need to add an icon. So I'm going to click here on image and icon and set this to use icon. Right, so the icon we're going to choose here is just an icon of a tablet. So I'm going to select it. Now it's time to go to the design settings. So I'm going to click the second tab. So first of all, we're going to come over here to our text and set our orientation to center. And then we're also going to change our font. So we're going to come over here to title text. And then we're going to search for Oswald. Select it. We're going to make this all caps. And then we're going to set our letter spacing to 1 EM. Now it's time to add our body font. So I'm going to come over here, and for our body font, we are going to choose, and then for the font weight, I'm going to set this to light. And then over here, by default, it's set at 14. So I'm going to change this to 16. Now let's add our custom padding. So I'm going to click here on spacing. So over here, I'm going to add 20% to the top and 25% to the bottom. And then for the left and the right, I'm going to set this to 20%. And then what we also need to do here is to make sure that our text is easy to read. So I'm going to turn this from dark to light. So back over here to the top, I'm going to choose text. Change my text color from dark to light. And now you can see it's easier to read. And then we might as well add our color for the icon. So I'm going to click here on this little brush tool and then set my color to white for my icon. So now with that set, I'm going to go ahead now and save. And then what we're going to do now is to duplicate this a few times and then add a background color to the design. So I'm just going to hit Command C because I'm on a Mac. If you're on a PC, it's Control C. And then you can just paste by hitting Command V or Control V on a PC. So quickly, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change these icons. So I'm going to come into this gear icon, click on image and icon, and then I'm going to search for a different icon here. So I'm going to go with the mobile device. Right, so finally, we're going to add our background image and also our background gradient. So I'm going to click this gear icon here, click on background, and then I'm going to go to the third tab and add my image. So the image here you can choose is pretty much any image. So I'm just going to come over here and see what I have in my library. And I'm going to go with this one right here. I'm going to click upload an image. And then next, we need to click here on the gradient tab. I'm going to click this plus button, add my first color. Now this color is an RGBA, so I'm just going to drag the slider down and paste my values between these brackets like that. Click on my second color. I want to do the same. Right, so now I need to place this gradient above the image. So I'm going to click on yes to that option. And now we can see we have great contrast between our background image and our blurbs. So this is the final design. So I'm going to go ahead now and save. Okay, so now it's time to work on our fourth design. So I'm going to click this plus button here, click on regular, and I'm going to choose a 3-column structure as we did before. Select my blurb. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an image here. So I'm going to click image and icon and select my image. So the image I'm going to go with here is pretty much any image from my image library. So in your case, you can use specific images that you choose from your library, depending on your type of design. So I'm going to go with this bag here. Click on upload an image. Right. So what we're going to do next is we're going to give our image some borders. So I'm going to click on design, border. So I'm going to start with the border top. So over here, I'm going to give this 8 pixels. And we're also going to give this a color. So I'm going to paste my color in here. And then we're also going to come over here to our border left and do the same. This is going to be 8 pixels. And we're also going to give this the same color as we did before. Right. So now I'm going to go to the box shadow. So the one I'm going to choose is this one right here. So for the horizontal position here, I'm going to set this to -20. And for the vertical, I'm going to set this to -30. And then finally, I'm going to add my color. So I'm going to click here on this eyedropper tool and paste my color. In fact, my borders here are the same color. So I'm just going to go back and set my colors one more time. Right. So the next stage now is to add my title font. So I'm going to come over here and add my title font. And this time, this is going to be this one right here. I'm going to select it. And my body font also needs to be changed. So I'm going to come over here and change this to Montserrat. Right, so what we're going to do now is to go to the spacing and add our margins. So for our margin bottom, I'm going to set this to 50 pixels. And for the padding, I'm going to set this to 2VW. And I'm going to do the same over here to the right as well. Right, so moving on, I'm going to come over here to my borders again. So I'm going to start off here with my right border. I'm going to select it and set my size to 15 pixels. Select the bottom border, set this to 15 as well. Okay, so this is our final design. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy and paste them over here to the other columns. Okay, so now it's time to work on our final design. So what I'm going to do here, as I did before, is click this plus button to add our regular section. And this time we're going to go for two equal column structures, choose our blurb module. So in fact, before we go in and start adding our blurb modules, what we need to do is to go into our row settings and make some customizations. So the first thing we're going to do is to add a custom width. So I'm going to come over here to design, sizing, and then I'm going to click on custom width. And we're going to set this to about 700 pixels. And we're also going to set this gutter width to 2 and then save. Now it's time to go and make some adjustments to our blurb module. So I'm going to click this module settings, image and icon, and then I'm going to click on use icon. So here I'm going to choose the icon I'm going to go with. And again, you can choose any icon that works with your design. But in my case, I'm going to go with this one right here. And then over here for the text, I'm just going to get rid of the text title and also the description text. Right, so next I'm going to come over here to design, click on image and icon, and I'm going to set my color by clicking this eyedropper tool, paste my value of my color here. Next, we need to give a specific size to this icon. So to do that, we need to give this a size. So I'm going to activate use icon font size, and we're going to set this to 400. So we want this nice and big like that. And for the smartphone, we're going to set this to 200. So you might as well just come in here and set it to 200. And then back over here on my desktop view. For now, I'm going to go ahead and save. And then next over here, I'm going to add my blurb module. So this is where my list is going to be. So I'm going to select my blurb here. And then I'm going to come to image and icon. So this time I'm going to activate my icon and choose this right arrow. Great. The next thing I'm going to do is to come back over here to text and get rid of all this text because I don't need it. Now let's go to the design settings. So I'm going to click this design tab. So I'm going to come over here to image and icon. So first of all, I'm going to set the icon placement to left. And then we're also going to change our icon font size. So I'm going to activate this and set this to 30. And then for our icon icon color, I'm going to set this to white. So right now it looks like it's disappeared, but we're going to fix that in a minute. So in fact, we might as well do that. So I'm going to come back over here to content. Click on background, and we're going to add a background color, just like that. And then I'm going to come back over here to my design settings, and let's continue. So what I'm going to do next here is to change my color. My color and the font of my heading. So we're going to change this to railway. So I'm going to click here and search for it. Right, so for the font size, I'm going to set this to 20. For the line height, I'm going to set this to 1.5. Right, so what I'm going to do next is to set our padding and our margin. So I'm going to come over here to spacing, and for our margin, I'm going to set this at 5% to the bottom. And then for the padding, I'm going to set this at 3% to the top, 10% left, 2% right. So now that looks all centered. So what I'm going to do now is to save this and duplicate this 4 times. Right, so now it's time to stylize these. So what I'm going to do here is to go to the second one. So I'm going to click here on the gear icon to make some customizations. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add a different background color. So I'm going to click here on background, and then I'm going to paste my value in here. Now, as I said at the beginning of this tutorial, you can always use the same values by going to the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. Right, so for now, I'm going to save because what I need to do here is to make a bulk edit, because my font here needs to be white. So I'm going to hold on my command key and then select all these like that. Click on this gear icon, and then I'm going to click on design, text, and then I'm going to change this text color from dark to light. So now you can see everything is now easier to read. So I'm going to go back here and save, and then I'm going to go back into my module that I was editing. Great. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with my margins. So I'm going to go to design, spacing. So here we're going to add 10% to the left, minus 10 to the right. Right, so what I'm going to do next is to go to the rounded corners. So to the top right, I'm going to add 50 pixels. So first of all, I'm going to break this chain and then add my 50 pixels here. And then the bottom left, you're going to do the same as well. So now we have this beautiful design here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to copy these rounded corners and then paste them over here. So first of all, I'm going to save the changes. And then I'm going to click here on design, border, and then I'm going to paste rounded corners just like that. So do the same, add the rounded corners to the bottom 2. Right, so what I'm going to do now is to come over here to my third blurb. So I'm going to click here on the settings, click on background, change my background color. And then next, I'm going to go to my design tab, click on spacing. So over here for our custom margin for the left, I'm going to set this to 20%. And then for the right, I'm going to set this to minus 20%. Now it's time to add my rounded corners. So I'm going to click here on border, break the chain. So for the top right, I'm going to set this to 50, and bottom right, again, 50. And then finally, over here on the bottom, you just need to reverse these rounded corners. So let me just show you one of them. So click on design, and then I'm just going to reverse these. So I'm going to add my 50 over here, set this to 0, 0, and then 50 over here. So do the same to the final one, and that will be our final design. So I'm just going to go ahead quickly and do that. So this is our final design. So I'm going to go ahead now and save.
So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.